Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. This video is going to be very fast. Very fast. And I'm going to call it a morning or a night. I'm not sure which. Let me check my volume, I'm sorry. So, my channel has been completely demonetized. Maybe this might not turn out to be a bad thing. Ultimately, YouTube doesn't like that I play other videos, even though I have no copyright strikes. And they have not shown me the videos that they've found offensive. Apparently this is, I don't know if it's a new policy or what. They sprung it on the video at the last minute. They're just out of the blue, no warning, no nothing. And so yeah, they've demonetized the entire channel. That said, if you're so inclined and you want to get through Super Chat, there's a Super Chat alternative. There's a link in the description box. You click on it in the same way you would click the typical Super Chat thing, and it will take you to an area where you can essentially give via PayPal. Best I got. That or Patreon, either one. Candace Owens. So I've come across Candace Owens on a few occasions. There was some interview apparently that she did that was utterly ridiculous in regards to the stuff that she was spewing. And she goes on Twitter. She's a right-winger. She's a Trump supporter. She's an African-American Trump supporter. The African-American part should matter. Yeah, should matter. And so I'm not going to include it in anything I say. But I'm biased on this front, and I admit my bias on this front. I have a hard time with this thing of it's funny, less of a hard time, and that's the sad part. That shows how far the party has fallen, because like this idea of a very clear understanding within the African-American community that there is a faction of this country that hates your guts, and that faction lives in the crevices, in the corners of the other party. Now, that's not to say that there aren't some people in the Democratic Party that are along the same lines, but there were monsters that jumped into the other party. That's the way it's in my head. That's the way I was raised. That was the way I understood it. Not to mention, you look at some of the stuff that Paul Rand and all these other guys wants to do, it hurts people on a certain part of the income economic distribution. So, I have certain biases. But that said, those biases don't necessarily apply in what I'm going to say, so it's somewhat of a moot point. I hit this because it's nonsense. I call it nonsense on Stilts. Incompetence with the neck brace. She tweets absurd things. I'm going to hit on two of the absurd things that she tweeted out. And you'll see what I mean. So this is her Twitter page. I'm fascinated by the Twitter page because I'm sitting here like, this is nonsense. Nobody calls this nonsense. All the left has to offer is dependency. Freedom is a conservative position. All the left has to offer is dependency. Freedom is a conservative position. I love that. They just put that out there. They just say it. I often wonder, do they actually know what these things mean? Freedom is a conservative position. Freedom for who to do what? Freedom for who to do what? Any level of freedom, there is no such thing as absolute freedom. So the question becomes, what sphere of freedom are you talking about? And as a newsflash, just as somewhat of a logic issue, any level of absolute freedom is going to infringe upon somebody else's absolute freedom. Meaning there's no such thing as absolute freedom for everybody. Meaning any level of idea of freedom that you're talking about to some degree is going to oppress or suppress the freedom of somebody else. Freedom for who to do what? What is the freedom that you're talking about? That's so ubiquitous in the conservative party? Is it the freedom to say bad things about people, to call people names, to call people racist and sexist? Well, that's the Democratic Party. I'm sorry. That's the Democratic Party. That's the freedom of the Democratic Party. You're racist. You're sexist. I agree with Candace on that one. That's true. But is it to be racist and sexist? Homophobic? Is that really the freedom that you want? Or is it the freedom of the capitalists to run roughshod over other human beings? Meaning the 1% to own half of the world, or more than half of the world, and the rest of the public to essentially live as they must, or live as they can. What freedom are you talking about? And for who? That's what it really boils down to. This idea of all the left has to offer is dependency. It is an honest conversation. It is an honest thing to say that any level of interaction, seeing as there are other people that are around you, requires a certain degree of cooperation. It is an honest thing to say that it is easier to interact with people when there's a certain degree of... I don't like this idea of political correctness, but the political correctness I'm talking about is just not being fucking racist. And not in the hysterical way that people use it, meaning... See, this conversation is made difficult because of the Democratic Party, if I'm being honest. Like, there's a lot of stuff that people will call racist that I consider to just be people expressing themselves. And I gotta be honest, my job in this, and I gotta be honest, I don't particularly care when people hate my guts. Like, the conversation that's to be had goes beyond this idea of just race. This is the thing that annoys me about identity politics. You should defend identity, meaning people shouldn't be racist and sexist and bigoted and none of that stuff. By the same token, people still need to have a political latitude and space to say what they got to say without being beat over the head in the way that you can say elements of the party beat people over the head using identity to supplement actual economic reforms. Any level of freedom for a large number of people would require some level of cooperation. That's my point. So this idea of freedom and all this other stuff being part of the Republican Party, it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. Any level of society where you're talking about a large number of people. Look, if you're talking about freedom for the capitalists, then yeah, you're going to have an issue with this idea of the democracy space. Meaning, the sphere of influence from the standpoint of democracy is different than the sphere of influence from the standpoint of capitalism. And yet, in our society, it's freedom in the sense of for the capitalists. That this is somewhat of a weird thing. You would think that a democratic structure would produce this kind of freedom in a democratic way, but freedom to what we call it and what we consider it is more so the more money you have, the more access to the things that you need, the more access to goods and services and places and everything else. You have a completely fundamentally different reality at that point. But freedom in a democratic way runs roughshod or runs headlong into freedom for the capitalists. I'm more interested in freedom from the democratic standpoint, not necessarily freedom from the 1% to run roughshod over everyone else, including the democratic process. There's one more I want to go with this one. And by the way, it's not dependency. It's like saying you're dependent on electricity. Well, yeah, the people who came before you who made electricity, they did something that allowed you to get along. Meaning she's not tweeting this using candle, in the dark. Yes, there's certain things that certain political structures and certain physical and mechanical and technological structures that our forefathers didn't necessarily have, that we take advantage of, and we try to move the ball forward. That's not just mechanical, however, and that's not just industrial, that's also political. That means, yeah, Social Security is something that got rid of what, like 2/3 of people off the streets. From the standpoint of off the streets is too strong, but out of poverty, meaning our elderly. That was a good program. That was something that moved the ball forward. The elderly in this country is not necessarily hurt by us having Social Security. The same thing will be true with having medical care. Look around the globe. Britain in no way is injured by having health care. France in no way is injured by having health care. I'm making the point that it's not dependency in this case. It's not freedom to live, die on the street without health care. I am free without my health care. I don't believe that we should have the Obamacare thing, so fair enough. But I do believe there should be government-run health care. It's not dependency. It's called collective action to do something that's for the best of the whole. Right here. And this one. I love this one. One of the dumbest things journalists ask me at events is, why do you suppose the majority of the people here are white? They always look so shocked when I remind them that black people only make up 13% of the U.S. population. Want more? Stop aborting 800 of us a day. Now, I think she was a little touchy by this one, if I'm being honest. I could be wrong, but this comes across as slightly touchy to me. One of the dumbest things journalists ask me at an event, why do you suppose the majority of people here are white? Now, journalists ask this to be dicks. Let's be honest. Let's be very clear. They're asking this question to be assholes. They're being dicks to her. She's at this event. They're saying, oh my God, there's a black person at this Republican event. Hey, aren't these people racist and sexist, especially if some of the journalists are Republicans or Democrats? And they go to her, hey, why do you think all of these people here are white and you're black? Why do you think that? Now, that would bug the shit out of me too. That would annoy the hell out of me if I was her. So I don't blame her for responding in somewhat of a dickish way. They always look shocked when I say that blacks only make up 13% of the population. Now, here, she's being dishonest. It is true that blacks only make up 13% of the population, but she knows goddamn well that they're asking her that question because they know that if they go to a Democratic event, the majority of the people there, well, they're going to be a large number of people that are African American at that event. And they know that blacks vote like 90, 80 something percent. And they're looking at her saying, why are you at this Republican event with all these white people? There's so much subtext in the conversation at this point. Neither one is saying real things. One is being a dick because they don't like her at this particular event. She's responding out of this kind of responding to the fact that they're asking her something that's a nonsense question by essentially responding in utter nonsense. Blacks only make up 13% of the population. It has nothing to do with their question. It has nothing to do with their question. Want more? Stop aborting us. And then there's a deflection to abortion, which has nothing to do with what they're asking her or the reason why they were asking her the question. The premise of the question itself, yeah, it was fair enough. It was they were being dicks. You responded in a way that was being just disingenuous. But I don't blame you for responding in a way of being disingenuous when they were asking you a question that was a nonsense question. But the reality of it is, it's a Republican event. The overwhelming majority of blacks vote Democrat. And look at African Americans that vote Republican with a certain amount of, derision. It's frowned upon. So, this one is interesting. This one is not incompetent. This one is not incompetent. This one is her responding in a way. I would say she's responding to something that annoyed her. And she had a right to be annoyed because the people were asking her something that had nothing to do with anything. Meaning, why are you asking her that question? You already know the answer to that question. That's what I'm getting at. She knows that they know the answer to the question, so she responds in kind. There's another one here, but I don't want to get to this one because I want to parse through this one. Because there's parts of this that the spirit of it, I agree with her. The context of it, I do not. And I know that sounds weird, which is why I'm not hitting it, because it's too early in the morning for me to cut through it. But, yeah, Candace Owens. There's one part to this. She's talking about police brutality. Look, even if the media is slightly off on this idea of the numbers and everything else, African Americans are still being shaken down at a ridiculous rate in relation to the number of us in the society. Look at New York. When they were looking at the results, it was like 80 something percent of the people who were stopped were black or Hispanic. It was like clearly disparities in the way that they were going about their affairs. Not to mention the reports by the Justice Department saying that there was a clear disparity in the way that the police were pursuing their affairs. I heard offense on some of this stuff. It's nonsense. But I understand the spirit of what she's saying, if that makes sense. This thing of the Democratic Party essentially tries to politicize this to try to scrape for black votes, but in reality don't necessarily do anything about it. The spirit of it, yes, but the pushing this in a Republican way is nonsense, utter nonsense, complete, no, entire nonsense. All right, I'm not gonna keep this one long. Skip Rock, Danny Knapp, you obviously just label anyone on the right as alt-right. There's a fight. Yes, and her transformation was even more sudden than Ruben's. Oh, she transformed? She was something else? She was something else at one point? Oh, wow. Well, Anna said Ruben got a lot of money. It just changed almost overnight. It's like, oh, I've seen the light now that you've given me a ton of money. Oh, yes. Yes, yes. Maybe that's why our arguments are this way. Like these kind of just right-wing tropes. I mean, freedom? I mean, come on. She's throwing more freedom out. This is hilarious. I wonder what happened to Sam Ronan after he got arrested. He seemed to drop off. You know what's wild about that? I thought about that earlier today. I literally thought about Sam today. Didn't do anything about it, but I did think about him. It crossed my mind. All right. I'm going to end this. It's early. It's 4:28. I'm going to try to be up early so I can get a few shows in early in the morning. God, it's fucking weird doing a demonetized channel. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Or, in this case, what is this? The Super Chat alternative in the box. Either one. Thanks guys.